I'm excited that you're watching this evening because I'm going to share with you an interview that I had earlier with the CEO of Houston Methodist Willowbrook Hospital, Keith Barber. But first, I want you to be in touch with Christy Sprague, who is the executive director of Bridging for Tomorrow, known around here as BFT, our sister organization that does work, powerful work, with Title I schools just a little bit south of here in the Klein district. Let's go first to my conversation with Christy. I guess we should orient people to BFT, which is a ministry that was birthed out of Faithbridge. It was a ministry that took on a life of its own some years ago under Pastor Dan's leadership in our missions area, particularly with the Title I schools, and finally became so substantial that we just decided it would be better to form it under its own separate 501c3. And now you have your own offices and headquarters. You're doing a fantastic ministry down there, and it is awesome that we get to be sister organizations doing partner ministry, particularly in this day and age. Speaking of, I was thinking to myself, you and I were sitting at a meeting with the lead team in person 3 weeks ago tomorrow. And as I was thinking about that, I was thinking, wow, those 3 weeks feel like 3 months, if not 3 years that have passed. I bet you would agree. Talk a little bit about what changes and adaptations have you had to make, are you making to do ministry now in this coronavirus era with BFT?
Yeah, so the last 3 weeks have been an extremely busy time for us. One of the ways that even just on a normal basis that we serve the community around us is through our food pantry, which is located in our community center, which, as you said, is just down the road from you guys. We are south of 1960, right in the heart of the Klein School District, right near Klein Forest High School. Most of the community that we serve is part of the Klein Forest family of schools. So all the schools that feed into that, and hunger insecurity is very normal in that area. There's a lot of that. And so that's one of the things that we do on a normal basis anyway. But certainly a situation like this has really upped the ante for that sort of thing. So in the last 3 weeks, we have opened our food pantry. Our other services aren't going on right now, as you can imagine. But we have decided that although we as staff will be very smart and listen to what the authorities are saying and work from home, we will a few days a week open up our food pantry, bring in just a small group of the staff, never the entire staff, so that we can do our best to help those families in need. The last 2 weeks, just to give you an idea, through our food pantry, and that's only being open 5 days in 2 weeks, we sent 27,000 pounds of food out our doors to families in need.
Wow. And what would a normal week of food distribution be?
Sure. So to give you some context there, a normal month of food distribution would be about 4,000 pounds. So that's an entire month's worth. And in the last 2 weeks, we did 27,000.
Wow. That's significant. And praise the Lord for it and for your presence in that community. So let's talk about the community. Describe the mood of that community. How is it similar or dissimilar to any community or to itself compared to a normal time?
Sure. There's definitely a certain measure of fear, but I would say the fear is really, sure, fear about the virus, unsure of what it is, or unsure of how to protect their families from it. Lots of confusing information all over the place. Fear about job security, fear about being able to get food, even just you've seen what the grocery stores look like. Food pantries face some similar issues, meaning can we get the product in to be able to put into people's hands? Fear of what this school year will mean for their children. I mean, many of the things that I think about for my family, and you probably think about, those are worries for them too. I would say what makes it more really close to the surface for many of them is, number one, they're already financially vulnerable. They're already one crisis away from really having an issue on their hands. Some of them have already been laid off, lost their jobs, as I know many communities are facing that right now. But there's also an issue of not having access to the same information that maybe I have access to or you do, or not. Maybe the information is limited, or it's not in their native language, or it's just hard to understand. And so I think whenever we have, when we don't know the way something works, or we don't know what we're supposed to do, or we don't know the next step, those are times I know in my own life that I feel maybe the most fearful or anxious. So it sort of feeds into it there, in addition to real issues of, can I feed my family? Will I have money coming in 2 weeks, a month, 2 months from now? Those are sort of the things that we're hearing.
Well, that makes sense. Talk about, how are you planning for the next month? What's the next month going to be like at BFT, to the extent that you can predict the future or make plans for an uncertain future?
Sure. Yeah, we are, just like Faithbridge, we're learning to do ministry in new ways. We're used to being with our people. Everything that we do is done through the context of relationships. So we're used to having our community center full of after school clubs for kids, or, mentoring people in different ways, ESL classes, obviously families coming into our pantry. We do counseling as well. We typically have support groups going on. So, unfortunately, those are things that we can't engage in right now, at least not in the traditional sense. I know that keeping our pantry open a couple of days a week for the foreseeable future and feeding as many people as we can that way, that will be, part of our new normal for a while. We do have 2 licensed professional counselors on staff. And so we have already started to do telecounseling that way, so that some of our families who are already in a very tender situation going into this, we can keep in contact with them and actually offer counseling sessions over a screen. We are trying to provide educational resources to our families, to just sort of, we've always partnered with the Klein School District and with Aldine to a certain extent as well. And we've always wanted to be that extra resource for families who might just need a little bit extra in navigating education, or a few extra resources. So even now, with the incredible content that Klein has produced and put out there, it's not as easily accessible for some of our families, or as easily navigated. And so we are already spending time on the phone. They're at a computer, we're at a computer. We're walking them through the steps of how to figure out what their kids are doing. We've already had people reach out to us to help them apply for government assistance in different ways. They've never had to before, but now they're in a spot where they're pretty sure they're going to. Those things are not readily understandable if you've never navigated them before. So we're helping families do that. Basically, we have a weekly check-in with every family that is involved in one of our programs. asking them what their needs are at that time and seeing if there's some way we can sort of bridge the gap with the resources they have and the resources that they need.
That's good. So I know that there's any number of people who would like to help in some way right now in this season. Is there a way that they can do that at BFT in this season?
That's another challenge, isn't it? We have always been a volunteer-led organization, and unfortunately, we can't use volunteers in the traditional sense right now. I know as we've even checked in with our volunteers over the last few weeks, they are missing the kids that they're used to being with, whether it's at club or in the schools reading to them or mentoring them. And so, unfortunately, the ways that people could traditionally help volunteering their time or even donating to our food pantry, we can't accept food or supplies right now. We can only go through the Houston Food Bank in that regard. And so, I think one of the best ways people help is just to really have a spirit of gratitude and generosity. And that might sound weird, but what I mean by that is, it's a generous thing to stay home and not go out, listen to the authorities so that this passes more quickly, so that people who have lost their jobs can hopefully get back to their jobs. That's a way of being generous. Being generous also looks like being a good steward. And if you're at the grocery store and you don't really need it, don't buy it and try to stock up on it. There's a lot of people who really do need, even if they can just get one chicken, one packet of chicken or something. If you can support organizations, nonprofits that are on the front lines right now, helping people with those who are in need the most, like we are, like the Houston Food Bank is, other nonprofits, NAM, if you can share anything with them and support them in any way, that can be helpful as well. I know we're going to have families for months to come that are going to need financial assistance in different ways. And so even we as an organization are strategizing now, what might that look like and how can we best provide some sort of financial assistance for the families that we're closest with. So, and obviously, just recognize that there's a lot of people out there that even though many of us are feeling different sorts of pinches and different sorts of anxieties, they're already in a deeper hole than many of us are. And so just have compassion for them, pray for them. And when things do change and there is an opportunity for you to volunteer or engage with the community somehow like that, do that when the time is right.
Well, that's a great word. And so let me bring a little clarity. Yesterday at on online church, we were talking about First Sunday Food Sunday. That is a way for people to help next Sunday bringing their groceries. We're going to announce then how we're going to receive them safely. But so that there's no confusion in the system, though we can't give our groceries to BFT because your groceries are coming. I mean, you're doing a huge deal. You work with the Houston Food Bank. Isn't that correct? Yeah. But there are a number of food pantries that we are working with. And so if we can get 400, 600, 800, 1,000 bags of groceries to come in next Sunday, that is helping nonetheless in all of these other outlying food pantries. Fair summarization?
Yes, it is. If I could just say one word to that, as somebody who is consistently moving food out of the food pantry, it's very helpful if you're not buying something from the store, if you're actually giving something from your home to check the expiration date on it first, because we have to check it when it comes in. And there's a tremendous amount of food that gets thrown out that we just can't pass on to others because it's already expired.
That's a great word. Yeah, makes all the sense in the world. Hey, thank you so much for this time. Thanks for all that you're doing, for your whole staff, for everything that they're doing. It is a joy being in partnership with BFT, Bridging for Tomorrow, here at Faithbridge. And God bless you and stay safe.
Thank you, Ken. Thanks for having me, and you too. We absolutely love being partnered with Faithbridge, and Faithbridgers are always so generous with us and support us so well. So thank you. You stay safe too.
I'm here with Keith Barber, the CEO of Houston Methodist Willowbrook Hospital. He is not just the CEO to me, he's actually a personal friend. We've been friends all of the 5 years that he's been the CEO, and I'm grateful for our friendship. We actually had this conversation towards the end of last week. I think it was Friday. But so much has changed since Friday. We decided we just need to do this again. I texted him a few hours ago and said, hey, we just got to go live because so much has changed. And he was gracious enough to say, let's do it. And so here he is. Welcome, Keith Barber.
Thank you. It's great to be here, and great job on using technology to expand your social distancing during this time. So from the healthcare community, we say thumbs up. Good job.
Well, thank you. Yeah. So we're all finding new ways to exist and to do ministry. So let's jump in. This past week, I think it was Friday when you and I were last talking, we had just gone over 80,000 COVID-19 patients ahead of any other nation in the world. And so now number one. And today, I think it's gone over 150,000, right? And so help us all frame that into some sort of context. Could you?
Yeah. Well, absolutely. Friday was sobering for all of us when we surpassed China's numbers. And now we've almost doubled that 3 days later. So certainly we are in a swell here in America. We know and are very sorry for what's going on with our fellow Americans in New York, and even not that far from us, what's going on in New Orleans. So certainly they're seeing a lot of fast numbers appear. And we certainly see for different reasons. Houston is very different from New York. You've got people that live much closer together. But also what could be impacting that is a difference in when certain action was taken. So we're very pleased that a week ago, we made the decision to stay at home here in Houston. And we've had great response from our community in that way. So we're very hopeful that that's going to have a positive impact on how our numbers will be impacted in the coming weeks.
Yeah, so let's talk about that a little bit more. I see in New York these soaring numbers, and I found myself wondering, I bet any number of people have, wondering, okay, is that where we're going in Houston? I'm hearing you to say maybe not, because we've done social distancing a little bit ahead of them. Is that an accurate understanding? I see them also. Well, I'll save that question. Go ahead and jump in on that.
Yeah. Well, we're hearing so many different things. We have heard from Fauci himself to expect communities to experience what New York has experienced. I think we are hopeful again by taking action. And I think there's two main components that are going to help us. Is one is social distancing, and the other is testing. And we know that we've not had the testing that we've needed and that we've wanted. Hopefully now that is coming. We actually just got word the other day of a quick turnaround test that is coming. Mm-hmm. And so that's certainly going to play a big part, because I think as we social distance and create a positive impact for the spread, certainly in our own city and our own communities, as we come out of that, because we know we're not going to have a vaccine for a long time, a year plus, that certainly ability to test and get quick results is going to be needed in order for us to continue to impact our numbers in a good way.
And I assume the reason that the testing is so important is because if you can test everybody, then you can just keep the sick people home and everybody else can be released from quarantine. Is that the theory?
Yes, certainly that plays a part of it.
Okay, so I'm curious to know, and hopefully Houston went towards lockdown or whatever we call it now, stay home, work safe, early enough. In the event that it's more rampant than we even realize yet, and in the event that we become more like a New York, I'm curious to know. I mean, I see the ship come in that's going to provide relief hospital space for them. The tenting materials they're building up. I hear of Dallas starting to convert their convention center. Does Houston have a fallback contingency plan that we're ready to enact if that were to happen in Houston?
So fortunately, our city is working very well together. All of the leads of all of our hospital systems have certainly come together. Government, obviously FEMA has come into place. We've got at Butler Stadium, we have testing that is getting set up. And so we are working very, very well together. When we decided to make the Stay at Home Act, and obviously those teams have been working with epidemiologists and doing projections on when our the acute phase would peak. And we are using those projections across all of our hospitals to make sure that we have the right number of ICU beds and right number of medical surgical beds to accommodate the anticipated levels that we will have in our hospitals. One of the reasons, a lot of people think, the reasons we stopped doing elective procedures was protect patients, but it's really more to create capacity within the hospitals so that we can handle the influx of patients that we are anticipating. So yes, a great deal of planning is being done in order to be ready for an anticipated swell in patients that will need hospital care.
It's good. Let's talk about the hospital that you know and that I know best, Houston Methodist Willowbrook, and the other Houston Methodist System hospitals. So there's no elective surgeries going on, so that you have fallback space. Now, you're still going to have the cardiac arrest patients. You're going to have other things that are legit, urgent, semi-urgent sorts of scenarios that are coming. How are they all folding into the same emergency room, or how do you keep them from getting COVID in addition to what they are going in for?
Right, and I'm glad you asked that question because it's a great opportunity to really express how safe our hospitals are right now, even though we're dealing with this. So, for example, if you come to Willowbrook, we have a big tent set up outside the emergency room. So patients that are presenting to the emergency rooms are being screened. And if they're dealing with any level of upper respiratory situation, they're triaged to our tent and tested. Many are even sent home from there if they're not. It's kind of the walking well that we think may be dealing with this. And so they may be tested and sent home, and certainly given direction to if they worsen, that type of thing, to be able to get medical attention. But some of those patients will never even enter the hospital through that process. However, for those that are ill and are being admitted to the hospital, we have cohorted those patients in 3 different areas within our hospital, and we have dedicated employees that are taking care of those patients. So then the other areas of the hospital, we don't have this in those areas at all, because we still have emergencies coming in, whether it's a heart attack, that type of thing. So we are definitely able to accommodate those patients in in areas that are not commingled with our COVID-19 suspected or confirmed positive patients.
Gotcha. Okay. That's encouraging and helpful. Let's keep talking about Methodist for a minute, which is a subject you like and that I like too. I was pretty proud, pleasantly surprised today to see on the front page of the Houston Chronicle, we're at Leading Medicine with an experiment that has to do with, was it blood transfusion? Explain a little bit better. What are they experimenting with?
So, our scientists down at our research institute are using blood from recovered positive COVID-19 patients and infusing that into patients that are really very, very ill and maybe looking to succumbing to COVID-19 as a way to provide that blood infusion, and then that becomes an antibody for the COVID-19 itself. So yes, that happened Friday night, and we're certainly very hopeful, and we'll be looking to hear more about how that is, what the outcomes are for that therapy.
Fascinating, and it makes sense. Lord, let it work. Talk about the malaria drugs. I've heard about the medication that is a pretty old medication, but they're finding maybe some hope of those meds being therapeutic as well. Talk about that.
Yes, it's a drug called hydroxychloroquine, and it's a malaria drug that's been around for a long time. And we have found, in fact, here at Houston Methodist Willowbrook, we've already had some patients treated with it, and immediate improvement in their white blood cell count, coming back into range. And so that's been very promising. Certainly these therapies have to be used very limited and on the right types of patients. The malaria drug is not something that you would use on younger patients, that type of thing. So, but our teams are working tirelessly and just unending, doing everything they can to work on these patients, and they're just doing a fantastic job with some therapies that are certainly very hopeful.
Well, let them work. The best estimates I've heard is that it'll take a year and a half to get a vaccine. They think something along those lines.
That's what we're hearing. Hopefully, we're hearing a lot of varying information. A year and a half. I've heard some closer to a year, but certainly not in the near future for us.
Gotcha. All right. So now, if someone goes in to the hospital for a non-COVID 19 problem, I know that we have some new protocols on guests. And I'm thinking particularly of a mother who is going to be having a baby and asked, will my husband be permitted to come in? And so I thought, well, I'll just find out what are our policies and why are we doing what we're doing?
So great question. And we're on about our third different phase of guest policies. So now we are officially into a no guest unless you are determined to be an essential guest. And so fathers of expectant babies are considered essential guests. So they're certainly invited to be a part of that process. And then certainly when we look at other patients, it's really on a case-by-case basis. And I'll say our instruction for our employees and our staff is certainly focused on compassion. So anything that we're dealing potentially end of life, maybe it's not COVID-19, we're certainly, or acute illnesses, we are allowing for essential visitors, but we are looking at it on a case-by-case basis. But yes, fathers are certainly encouraged to be a part of that birthing experience, even now.
I'm sure that'll make her happy. I would also assume, though, that everybody, you're probably having to take the temperature and
yes. Everybody that comes into the hospital, we're screening every single individual.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you got to
even I get screened every morning coming in.
Oh, do you really?
I do.
Okay. Well, that's good. All right. So let's switch subjects to just the more personal. So we have a lot of people who at least perceive that they're healthy, and so the question arises: what's the harm in just having a few neighbors over? Nobody's coughing, nobody has fever, and we'll just have a little barbecue and try to make the best out of an otherwise sort of mundane time. What say you about that?
Yeah, it's a great question. And those are, I think, where you kind of get into some marginal areas. In fact, this weekend, I was pleased to see so many people outside and getting fresh air, which was great. But still, that stay-at-home mandate is also goes along with be with your family. But outside of that, don't have the neighborhood barbecues. This is just not the time. It's hard to really keep track of where all those people have been. And when you see the models in place where you can kind of see what can happen if one person comes and joins the barbecue that was exposed and how that can impact, that's really not the social distancing that we're being asked to do. So stay at home, work from home if at all possible, be with your families inside your homes, and just make the best of it. Be creative and take care of yourself so that you can do this for a while longer, because it's what's going to be needed in order to impact our numbers the way we need them to be.
Well, that makes sense. And as I understand it, I mean, if you just had one person at the barbecue who had been exposed, even if you didn't know it, he could be there shredding off the
Absolutely
virus to everybody at the party.
Yes,
on its spreads, and nobody meant ill from it.
Right.
I said to our people a couple of weeks ago, the way I'm framing this in my mind when I get impatient is Jesus' mandate to love our neighbors as ourselves. One of the best ways we can love our neighbors right now is to not be with them or they with us. Though we can certainly reach out and talk by phone and, those sorts of things, but just to do our part to make sure that we're doing everything we can to, flatten the curve.
That's right. Flatten the curve.
All right. So a couple more. Let's talk about this. You were telling me the other day, I was curious about restaurant food, because sometimes there were lines order in. Or order out and bring it in, and talk about what are you recommending? What are you being told? This is the way to think about carry-out food.
Yeah, it's a great question, and we certainly promote supporting our local restaurants, because obviously they're wanting to do what they can to provide for us. So the research says, food itself, certainly heated food, especially, is the virus does not is not heated food. So we encourage you to order out. But the biggest issue is the packaging that the food comes in. So if you're going to order out, do everything you can to pay for it electronically. Try to not have contact with the delivery person. So have them put it on your doorstep, or even we've seen, going by restaurants, you don't even have to get out of your car, and obviously they transfer. When you get home, take the foods out of the sacks or boxes or whatever. Open up the containers, wash your hands thoroughly, 20 seconds of washing, transfer the food to your own plates. Then go back and immediately dispose of all the containers and everything, and then come back and wash your hands again for 20 seconds, and then sit down and enjoy your food.
There it is.
And so the barbers this weekend did practice that on several occasions, and we followed that protocol.
Oh, well, the Wearlines have been doing it too, and I'm getting rather good at it. And then I even put a little Clorox wipe on the counter where the boxes had been placed.
That's good.
Yeah. All right. So we're learning new ways. So let's start to bring it in for a landing. Any number of Faithbridgers have sent in notes saying, hey, I feel great. What could I do to help? Of course, we're having a blood drive. I think that actually filled up very quickly. I think we're going to have another blood drive because we understand that those blood banks are needing blood. We're having food drives and this sort of thing. Is there anything in particular that would be helpful for us to be thinking of that we could do for hospital personnel? Because, like I'm hearing on the news, that they're the front line, they're the soldiers in this war, and we need to do everything that we can do to help the doctors and the nurses and the technicians and all. What would you say, Keith?
Sure. So certainly, beyond praying every day, we certainly need our communities of faith doing that for all of us. But you mentioned blood, giving blood, because at a time like this, giving blood slows down. So anything you can do to continue with your blood drives, our blood banks are getting a little thin. So not that we're out or anything, but just continue to keep that pipeline of blood coming in. And then we've all been hearing about protective gear for our employees. And we've been amazed of the churches and organizations that have masks and different kinds of supplies related to that. So we're taking donations for that. We are in good shape, but still doing all that we can to manage that pipeline of goods so that we continue to have that for our employees, especially as we experience the swell and these patients needing certain types of masks and that type to protect the patients and the employees. So I would say those are certainly the biggest areas. But the biggest thing people can do is also take care of yourself so that we are available to take care of those certainly in need. And again, the social distancing is certainly care. Stay at home. Be creative so that what we're really also focused on in the workplace is this is not like a hurricane that we're going through. I mean, this is more of a marathon that we've got to run. So within the hospital, we've got our leaders even going shift by shift, and because we know that we're going to have to do this for weeks on end. And so everything you can to do to stay healthy and make room for those in the hospital that are going to become acute, because we know the swell is coming, will be a great way to contribute to the community in which you live.
It's a good word. Incidentally, just for those who are watching or listening, Keith, because I discovered that thanks to our staff, that we had some boxes of masks and gloves that typically go out with our mission teams, but we said, hey, this is the time we need to give them to the hospital, and I think you're arranging for us to get that transported over to you.
We did. We made that connection today, and so we really appreciate that very much.
Well, good. So back to one technical question that you just got me thinking about just then. The swell, when does the modeling project that Houston will hit its peak?
So the models that we're looking at, and again, I say this very tentatively because, again, we don't know what we're really going to experience until we experience it. But based on when we made a decision to stay at home, we're hoping that we peak sometime early to mid-May. And again, I say peak, so then obviously we go down after that. So let's hope that certainly we would love it to be sooner, but that's what we're seeing now. And I think, every day we go take a step more into this journey, we will know more. But that's what we're projecting at this point. And so we're gearing up our ICU beds and our medical surgical beds for those projections as we see it right now.
Yeah. So realistically, that might be in the next 3 to 6 weeks Houston hits its high point. And so for those of us who like to get our bad news up front, just to get it out of the way instead of getting our hopes up and being disappointed perpetually, realistically, we're going to be in this until well into May, through May, probably well into June, if not throughout all of June, before we start making some steps back towards normalcy, you think?
I certainly don't think that's unrealistic. I think certainly planning for that kind of gets us geared towards it. I've been incredibly impressed by the creativity of people using Zoom and Microsoft Teams, different things like that to stay connected, because we're going to have to find ways. This isn't just going to be two or 3 weeks and we're done.
Yeah.
And so we've got to find ways to be able to do this for a while longer. Certainly, we would love for it to be shorter, but I think we potentially are going to be doing this for a little bit longer.
Well, we had a defining moment in a lead team meeting today when the question was asked about something. Are we going to cancel that? And one of us said, you know what? We're not going to cancel anything, which is not to say we're going to bring people onto our campus and do what we've been asked not to do. It is to say every person at Faithbridge, we have to start thinking we're moving forward. We're just doing it through Zoom. We're doing it through other ways. We're going to figure out ways to do all of the ministry that always happens. And let's quit using this word canceling and sort of holding on to 2 or 3 weeks ago, like maybe it'll be back to that tomorrow. Let's move forward, say, no, we're not canceling. We're moving on, and this is our new normal. We're just going to figure out how you live in this new normal.
Right. We do it in a new way. I'll also share that virtual doctor visits. We rolled that out at Houston Methodist on My Methodist app, where you can literally go onto My Methodist on your phone and go for a virtual physician visit. We rolled that out in the fall, and we were doing maybe 30 or 40 a day in January. And we did over 2,000 in one day late last week. So I predict that after people become more comfortable with virtual visits, to a certain extent, we'll never go back there. I think that will be something that people just become more comfortable with. So I want to promote that, because that's a way that people can still get safe healthcare today if it's needed.
That's great. Hey, Keith, this has been really great. It's always great to talk to you, and I'm glad that we could do it.
Absolutely.
In the presence
My pleasure.
Of others. Let me say a prayer for you.
Thank you.
Lord, I thank you for my brother Keith. I thank you for his strong leadership gifts, for the abilities that you've given to him to make big decisions, to make them quickly, to work in tandem with the other CEOs in our Houston Methodist system under Dr. Mark Boom's leadership, ultimately, and just for the privilege, I thank you, of getting to be affiliated with such a great institution. Lord, I pray, God, you'll give to Keith extra grace, extra strength, extra mercy, extra clarity of thought as he gives guidance that matters like never before. I pray, God, for all of the medical staff, the doctors, the nurses, the technicians. They really are the front line in this war. I pray, God, that you would protect them and that no weapons formed against them would be permitted to prosper, that you'll keep them healthy, that you'll give them supernatural energy and grace when they're feeling really tired, that you would be just supplying and resupplying for all of their needs, Lord, and that you'll carry us through. We know that you have us in one of these seasons that always in the end is found to have worked together. You work things together for the good of those who love you and are called according to your purposes. And so we're trusting that you're at work. We can't see exactly what's going on, but we know you're going to bring good from it. And so we thank you for that. Thanks for this time now. I pray it all in Jesus' name. Amen. Thanks once again, Keith.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been a pleasure.
Well, and thank you one and all for tuning in. Be sure that you tune in again tomorrow. We have tomorrow morning devotions at 8 a.m., followed by the Faithbridge Fitness Hour. And we'll just keep on journeying together in this new normal in new sorts of ways. So have a good night, everyone.